Okie doke, we are officially underway with our journey now into chapter 6. Chapter 6 of John Maxwell's The Leader Within You 2.0. So if you're flipping around in pages, you know what we're doing. We have been talking about a problem-solving attitude as part of leadership in chapter 5. And chapter 6 is more on attitude. Very exciting stuff. So you can jot that down. Here's what I want you to do, though, as we begin. I want you to think of someone that you admire and write their name down. All right, everybody think of somebody that you admire. Besides me, I know a lot of you are writing my name, say, gosh, he's my man. No, think of someone other than me. Write their name down. Now here I charge you with this. Write down at least 3 things that you admire about them. Okay? 3 things that you admire about the person that you wrote down. Yesterday, Anthony, down in Perth, he mentioned his father, that he had come to Australia with nothing, but he had sort of fought his way through, mentally tough, entrepreneur, and that's quite impressive. So he went through and listed out some of those attributes that that he admired about his father. So does everybody have somebody written down? Yeah? Does everybody have at least 3 attributes or things that you admire about that person? Okay? Now look at your list. I would imagine that if you looked at that list, a decent percentage of what you wrote down relates to attitude. Would you agree? If you wrote down, well, I admire this person because she's really strong. Well, part of being strong is being mentally tough. That's an attitude. Okay? So if you make that list and you think about people you admire a great bit about them. Mostly it's about their attitude. What is their attitude like? Okay? So we've got 2 big topic areas in this chapter. And we're going to talk about the first one this week, and then we're going to divide it up and next week finish the chapter. But Maxwell calls attitude the extra plus in leadership. Okay? The extra plus. And the attitude that he likes to talk about for at least half this chapter is the whatever it takes attitude. Whatever it takes. So jot that down. That's going to be the big heading. A leader's attitude, the most important thing. People asked him, what's the most important thing a leader has to have? And he wrote, if you ask me to identify the single most important aspect of a successful leader's attitude, it would be possessing a whatever it takes attitude. Whatever it takes. What do we mean by that? We mean that no matter what, you get the job done. No matter what, you hit the goal. No matter what, you know, most people would fall by the wayside with excuses, but you do whatever it takes to make things happen. Okay? Remember those 4 success habits that I pounded every time I'm on a recording or a video or when I'm with you in person? I say there's 4 things you need to do to be successful in selling or as a leader. Number 1, be on time. Number 2, what? You're right, do what you say. Number 3, finish what you start. Those are attitudes. Number 4, be courteous to people, right? So we had a saying back when I worked at Southwestern. I was a sales manager there for a number of years. And one year that we had a big push for execution. Like instead of just talking about stuff, we were going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. So one of the mottos that we had, it was printed on everything. Everybody really got rallied around it. And we did well. It was this. You never lay your head down at night without getting daily results. Okay? So I thought, well, what does that mean? Well, you measure things differently at your company, LGFG, than we did over at Southwestern. But there are certain things that you do every day, you know, to get results. So you want to make sure that you don't put your head down at night without having hit your targets, you know, whether it's calls or commitments or getting your appointments or filling up your calendar. You just never lay your head down. That's a whatever it takes attitude. All right. So how do you do this? How do you develop this whatever it takes attitude? The first thing that Maxwell says under this is he says, disown your helplessness. Disown your helplessness. And now, none of you that are on this call are helpless. Nobody at LGFG is sitting around acting helpless. Okay? If you're just joining us, we're talking about attitude, the whatever it takes attitude. And the first point is you have to disown your helplessness. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, I won't spend a lot of time on this just because none of you are in that. All the folks I've met at LGFG, you wouldn't be doing this career if you felt helpless, if you felt like a victim. But let me read you what one professor described as this helpless victim mentality. He said, a victim is a person who suffers a loss because of the actions of others. A victim tends to believe that salvation only comes from the action of others. Okay? They have little choice but to whine and wait until something good happens. Living with someone who chooses to play the victim role is draining. Has anybody ever lived with somebody that was a victim? Like, oh my gosh, life is hard. I can't change anything. He says, working in an organization where many people have chosen the victim role is absolutely depressing. That doesn't apply to us. Like a disease, the condition tends to spread, right? So Maxwell goes on to say, and this is an admission about his opinion about the current state of America. He says the victim disease has spread throughout the United States. And I remember when I was a kid, before you guys were even zygotes, go look up that word. But before you were born, John F. Kennedy, one of our presidents, gave a speech, and the whole nation tuned in, and he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And everyone cheered, and it was like, yes, we can do it, And 50 years later, I think that's changed a good bit. We've moved from we can make a difference to we can make no difference, really. I mean, we're all helpless. I mean, we had a quiet determinism, Maxwell says, and now America has devolved into noisy demands and victims' rights, and you've offended me. We're the United States of the offended. So anyway, it's a little bit depressing, but what the heck, God's still running the show. What happened? His contention is that our leaders, it always flows from the leaders, right? But our leaders slowly began to empower government to meet the needs of the people. And they wanted people to rely on them for power. So if you're sitting around feeling helpless, or you know people who are helpless, or you know people that are playing the victim card all the time, they're like, someone take care of me. Someone help me. It's not my fault. You're to blame. That's this whole notion of helplessness. So first step in getting a whatever it takes attitude is you got to chuck that. Like, see ya. We're not dealing with that. All right, move on. Here's another idiom that might be helpful to you. And I think it translates. The folks, I think the Filipinos that were on the call last night, I think understood this one, but it's an idiom that's take the bull by the horns. Okay? Does that work, Europeans? Have you heard this phrase? Taking the bull by the horn. Okay, that just simply means to take charge of your own destiny, to act, to make things happen. So, to win, LGFG, our company, has to disown the attitude of helplessness, and you have to really encourage the whatever it takes attitude. So let me just share with you some quick points on how you can make sure you take the bull by the horns and make sure that we don't get involved with any of this helplessness that we talked about. So Maxwell says, first, never make excuses. Okay? Well, it wasn't my fault. Well, the train was late. Well. You just don't make excuses. Second, he says, create a can-do environment. Like, we're going to figure this out. We can do this. And then third, if you're in a position of leadership, if you're an office leader, or really anybody, model whatever it takes attitude. Just model it. Practice it yourself. Okay? It always goes back to self-talk, right? Next, he says challenge people. to take responsibility for their outcomes, you know? So challenge people. Don't let them get away with whining and complaining and wishing things were different. Just say, okay, what can we do? What can we do to make a difference? Okay? And he says, make everybody feel important and valued. Okay? If people don't feel important, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel like they're contributing, then they can start to feel a little bit like the victim, which is not what we want. Okay? So there are more ideas, but that's enough. What the heck? So taking the bull by the horns. Let me give you 4 questions that I really like, stolen from an entrepreneur right out of the book. But these are some great questions that you can ask yourself, and when it comes to what you're shooting for. Okay, so here we go. Question number 1. Write these down. I'll send them in the email too because I like these. What do I really want? I mean, what do I really want? Okay, you might say, well, I want to be successful. I want to make a lot of money. I want to buy a house someday. That's pretty vague, but at least you're getting an idea. So what do I really want? Number 2, what will it cost? What will it cost? Being successful, making money, buying a home. What really? I mean, what's the price you have to pay? That's a big deal. Okay, 3rd question. Am I willing to pay the price? So in other words, do I have a whatever it takes attitude? Am I willing to pay the price to get what I really want? And if you go, no, not really, then I would contend you didn't really want that thing in the first place. It always involves sacrifice. Dang it, it always involves sacrifice. So what do I want? What will it cost? Am I willing to pay the price? And then the kicker, this is the big one. When should I start paying the price? When should I start paying the price? Oh, someday. I think I'll start. Well, it's going to be a long time before you get what you want. But those are really good questions to help you focus your brain on what is most important. Okay, the last little section that we're going to talk about today is about, he says, number 3, big number 3. First, let me just review. He said, disown your helplessness. Number 2, take the bull by the horns. And number 3, enter the no whining zone. Enter the no whining zone. You know what would be cool? I think if some of you guys printed out a little sign for your cubicle or for your office. I know we've got the big LGFG posters up with the logo and all that. It looks very nice. But you could just put up no whining zone. You know? Wouldn't that be cool? And then if you had felt the urge to kind of, I'm going to complain today, you would just glance at the sign and go, wait a minute, this is a no whining zone. That's illegal. I can't do it. So and that was me being creative. So let me share with you some thoughts about the no whining zone. Okay, what's the best antidote to complaining? Some ideas. Here you go. I'm going to spell them out. The best way to stop whining and complaining is, yes, hello whoever you are, is to express gratitude. And I would say express gratitude independent of your feelings. Yeah? Independent of your feelings. How many of you have moods? My hand's up. Okay. Bernice and I. Okay, there are 4 of us that have moods. Well, sometimes some days you wake up, you just feel great. You're like, I can take on the world. Things are going really well. Some days you're just kind of a little bit out of it. Okay, so being grateful, independent from your feelings, is a good thing to practice. And a lot of you have studied or you practice positive mental attitude, or PMA. You guys have heard that? PMA. Positive mental attitude. And I think sometimes you can really get the wrong idea of what positive mental attitude is. Some people think positive mental attitude is just completely ignoring problems and difficulties. But I would say that's a divorced from reality attitude. I mean, I remember I trained one of my sales teams a little too much in positive mental attitude. I mean, I was like really focused on that. So before we went out and sold together. I had them really like, we're going to be positive at all times. And I remember we were driving, we had a big car pool or car caravan driving down to our sales training. And I remember I had gotten a phone call that one of the cars had trouble. And I noticed it was pulled over on the side of the road and it was on fire. Now, if the car's on fire, you're going to try to do something about it. Well, my guys that I'd thoroughly trained in positive attitude were like, yay, cheering, look, our car's burning up, woo, dancing around. And I'm just like, what have I've created a monster here. Okay, there's nothing positive about watching your transportation go up in black flames. So I changed that. The next year we talked about having a proper mental attitude, still PMA, but a proper mental attitude toward problems. And it was really whatever it takes. Do you do whatever it takes to get the job done? Okay. Now, I had also recruited one year a team of engineers, guys who were going to be in sales, but their background and their training was in engineering. Now, that was cool because they were super logical. Okay. And they had trained themselves to, whenever there was a problem, they had 3 steps to a solution. Number 1, analyze the situation. Number 2, devise a plan of action. Number 3, proceed without delay. And I was like, oh, pretty impressive. So we were on one of these long trips down to our training school, driving along, and I got a phone call that they had a flat tire. One of the guys had a flat tire. So I said, well, what are you doing about it? He said, I'm analyzing the situation, devising a plan of action, proceeding without delay. We should have this changed in approximately 6 minutes. I'm like, well, okay, that's really cool. That's a proper mental attitude. He wasn't getting all emotional about the problems, and he wasn't being like psycho excited about the problems. He was just being steady and dealing with it. So one way, the first suggestion under the no whining zone is that you just express gratitude and you're thankful independent of how you feel at the moment. Okay, the second thing Maxwell says is to express gratitude for small, ordinary things. How many of you have been super frustrated at some point and then you just like went on a walk or you went hiking, or, I mean, not in the middle of a work day, but you know, on a weekend, you just got into nature. Have you ever done that? And you looked around and just went, oh, you know what? I appreciate this. You know, because we get so caught up in tasks and hitting goals and, you know, doing whatever it takes that sometimes we need to just exhale and express gratitude for small, ordinary things. That helps us not be whiners. Okay. The third thing he says, which I think is useful, is he says express gratitude in the midst of adversity. In the midst of adversity. And I think that's pretty cool. The example he uses out of the book of someone that expressed gratitude in the midst of adversity was a story about Charlton Heston, a famous actor. I don't know if you know Charlton Heston. He was the guy that played Moses on the 10 Commandments, a great, in all kinds of dramatic parts in older movies back in the day. But he had a long career, and his friend, Heston had just found out in 2002 that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So he was going to begin losing his memory very rapidly. And he and his friend were on a plane together, and they were talking about what was going on. And his friend said, you know, you're looking at me like I'm upset. He goes, well, you have to be. And Heston said, don't feel sad for me. I got to be Charlton Heston for almost 80 years, and that's more than fair. So he realized he wasn't going to even remember who he was within a matter of weeks or months, but he was thankful in that adversity just for the simple fact of being able to play his role, to play his part for that period of time. So those are some thoughts. I want you to start thinking about, do I have a whatever it takes attitude? You know, or do I tend to just succumb to the dark side and whine and complain a little bit? If you ask your teammates, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being whatever it takes and 1 being hand me a diaper, Where do I sit on the scale? That would be a good question to ask yourself. So it's a simple concept this week, but I want you to think about it. We're going to dive into the other half of this chapter next week. But let me share with you one little, since we've been talking about flat tires, or I actually have a quote to send you on your way. It says, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere till you change it. Huh? Yeah, that's right. That's a good one. A lot of you writing that one down. Anyway, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere till you change it. So if you have a bad attitude right now, if you're frustrated, change it. Write down 5 things you're grateful for, even though you feel frustrated at the moment. And the one thing we know, our moods change. Thank goodness our moods change. All right? So questions, comments, input, demute yourself. Do you know anyone that has a whatever it takes attitude? You go, wow, let's talk about her.
I want to be grateful for the lease calls that are pumping me with the right attitude for the week. Thank you, Lee.
Yes, Mamek, what a champion. The check is in the mail. And Mamek also wrote down, if you look at his paper, he wrote down, my name is the person he most admires at the beginning of the call. So that's very nice. So thank you for that. That's good. Always good to get feedback. Anyone else have a thought? Or see, there's so much safety in numbers, isn't there? Everyone just relax. We can take time just to sit and listen to Lee for a few minutes. Okay, great. All right, I will let you go. I want you to have a fantastic week. There's so much going on. I know Wednesday there's a big call with Dimitri, so be sure to tune into that. He's got some great news coming down the pike. I can't even keep track of everything that's changing because there's so much afoot, but it's all positive. And you guys are in a great place. So appreciate you being here. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in a week. Carry on.